And I'm looking forward, we're actually taking a family vacation to Florida in October for a week.
Ooh, nice. Good morning, everyone. Heidi Hoffman, I'm the director for the WIC program here at the state. I work at the health department. And I would say, along with Sandy, it's cooking. So soup is something that I really like to cook, and I can do it because you don't really need a recipe, but I don't really want soup all summer, so I'm excited about that.
Morning, I'm Leticia. I'm with the Blueprint and baking. Oh, I can bake all day long.
I'm Andrew Stricker. I'm with Trailhead Institute, and I'm also looking forward to baking, but mostly for my wife.
Hi everyone, my name is Trish Abelo. I'm with Hunger Free Colorado, working on the Food Pantry Assistance Grant with them, and it's my first time in Colorado, so I'm really looking forward to the leaves changing.
I'm Donna Garnett. I'm with Montbello Organizing Committee, Montbello Fresh Low Initiative. And I had just an awfully crazy summer. So the thing I'm looking forward to is riding my horse in the crunching yellow, changing leaves.
Hi, Dara Hussey with the Colorado Health Foundation. We are having Spirit Week here, so that's why we have balloons and weird shirts, but thank you for joining us for that. I don't think I would have referenced Starbucks, but man, you said that, and I do love myself a pumpkin scone, so I'm pretty excited about that.
I'm Ruben Gregory, Children's Hospital, Colorado. I'm the cold. I want cold nights and cold mornings and cold evenings. I'm so tired of the heat.
Elise Lubell, just for Public Health, and pumpkin, just pumpkin squash, all kinds of pumpkin food squash recipes.
Gabe Disbro with Lever Supermarkets, and just we're decorating, so we're kind of at the front of the decoration season.
My name is Rachel Robinson with Project Angel Heart, and I'm looking forward to the Broncos winning a game.
Good morning. My name is Laura McClanahan with Energy Outreach Colorado, and I am looking forward to jeans and boots and vests and warmer clothes.
Hi, I'm Carmen with Kaiser Permanente, and I'm looking forward to Halloween. That's my favorite holiday.
Great. We have lots of people on the phone today, so somebody just pop in and tell us who you are. Don't forget to unmute to do that.
Hey, I'm Matthew with the American Heart Association, and I actually live in Little Rock, Arkansas, so it's nice to join you all today. And I am looking forward to having a fire in my fireplace. Love that smell and love the comfort that it brings.
Hi, this is Lane Sadowski with the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment. I thought I would jump in after that one because I love the smell of wood smoke from everyone else's fires.
This is Maddie Keating with the Natural Resources Defense Council. Gosh, I'm looking forward to a lot of things this fall. I'm especially looking forward to going down to Chatfield Farms with my 4-year-old nephew to do the corn maze.
Hello, my name is May Tran with Anxious CCCSI project.
Hey everyone, this is Jess Harper. I'm with Metro Caring, and I am looking forward to making a bunch of soup. It's awesome, it's delicious, and it's shareable. I love it.
Good morning, everyone. This is Dana Wood at Garfield County Public Health. I'm looking forward to sleeping with my windows open.
This is Stephanie Salazar Rodriguez. I am the Director of Community Engagement at the Mile High Health Alliance, and I'm looking forward to a new batch of green chili.
Hi, everyone. This is Lindsay Williams. I'm calling from the Food Bank Network of the San Luis Valley down here in Alamosa. And I just put my down comforter on last week, and I gotta say, I am very excited to have that back in my life.
Hi, this is Divyani Pendleton. I'm filling in for Julie Atwood. I'm with the Integrated Nutrition Program at the University of Colorado School of Public Health. And I recently broke my ankle, so I'm looking forward to recovery and getting to walk again very soon.
Is there anyone else?
I'll chime in too, because I didn't go. Sorry for being late. Erin Pulling, Food Bank of the Rockies. I have to say, I'm trying to have a good attitude about fall. I didn't get enough summer. I'm still wearing sundresses. I'm trying to embrace needing my headlamp to go for runs in the morning, and I'm just not there yet.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. We're really happy to have it. This is a good turnout today, and I'm so happy that we have lots of people on the phone. So I know that Leticia and Andrew will somehow make our discussions work with people in different groups. I can see them shaking their heads. Okay, so Erin, we'll turn the table over to you.
Great, thank you. So I just wanted to provide some brief updates kind of from the blueprint and from the program office, and then if you all have any questions. I'm not speaking loud enough?
Well, never for me.
I know, I'm kind of a mumbler. I wanted to provide some updates from the Blueprint Program Office on some things that are happening over the last couple of months and then some things that are going to be happening over the next couple of months. And please feel free to chime in with any questions if you have any. So one quick update, just wanted to provide on staffing. So we are in the process of interviewing for both a community engagement manager position as well as a policy and communications manager. We have a really strong pool of candidates for both of those positions, which we're super excited about. We had over 500 applicants between the two positions, so it's been a little bit longer of a process than we had hoped, but I vetted all of them, so hopefully we didn't miss anybody amazing. I'm sure we did, but again, we have a really strong pool of candidates that we're going to be bringing in for interviews, so I'm very excited about that, and we're hoping to have those two staff members on board in early November, so you will get notifications as they are hired and an opportunity to meet them. And if anybody is interested in participating in interview panels, please let me know. We've definitely reached out to a pretty broad group of stakeholders, but not everyone. So if you're interested in participating in that process, again, let me know. We also had a departure of one staff member, so Kevin Warner is no longer with the Blueprint. He is now working for a company actually downtown right near here called Gusto. So he's in a great new role that he's super excited about. And, you know, it'll be a little challenging with logistics in the short term, but Leticia is officially on board. So week 6, she gets to take it all over. But she's been awesome. But reach out to either one of us if you have any questions. And then Andrew's been great. Andrew has moved back into a finance role at Trailhead, but has been great in terms of just continuing to support us in the short term and also with all of the numbers in the long term. So those are staffing updates that we've got. I do envision that core team of the 4 of us, so Leticia, myself, the policy and communications and community engagement manager will be kind of the core team of the Blueprint. That's not to say we may have other staff people coming and going based on project needs, but those will be the core staff for our office. I also wanted to provide an update on the Governing Council retreat. So we had a Governing Council retreat in the end of August, which was really great and had a full day of the Governing Council kind of coming together. We've definitely recognized the need for defining and building out all the infrastructure in terms of decision-making and how work groups are functioning and how they're related to the program office and how they're related to the Governing Council and who's making what decisions where. So we had some great dialogue around that. We have some very final decisions to make, but a lot of draft documents. So again, you should be seeing some communications about some of the outputs of that retreat over the next month or two as we finalize those documents. Again, on that, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know.
And then in terms of project updates, I just wanted to provide some updates on the different work groups that are going right now, because we have a number of different projects that have been identified by work groups, so to make sure you're all aware of them, then we'll be putting this in the Blueprint newsletter as well. But work group 1 has created 3 project teams. So they have a group that's going to be coming together around just collecting baseline data. So what data exists out there around public and political will already? There's Hunger Free has a voter poll. So there's a lot of information already out there that group is going to start compiling and really start thinking about gaps and what they can do to support in filling those gaps. They also have a work group that's coming together, or a project team that's coming together to create one-pagers around each one of the goals of the blueprint. So that's really to be supportive of kind of policy and community partnership efforts, so that we have a lot of clarity around why each one of these goals is critical and important. A lot of that information already exists within the blueprint document, but to put it into more of a manageable format for policymakers or community-based organizations will be helpful. And then lastly, they're going to continue to work on SNAP and WIC awareness. So they have created some SNAP outreach materials, which will hopefully be rolled out either later this month or early next month for use by any partners in the state, but a more kind of general just SNAP awareness material, which doesn't exist at the state level, that we can use with community partners, and then they'll be thinking about kind of how we evaluate the effectiveness of that, and then also how we're thinking about distribution systems, both for the SNAP outreach materials and then also partnering with WIC, who already has a whole suite of materials, but thinking about how we can support them in getting those out. So that's work group 1. You guys are work group 2, 3, so you don't need an update on that. Work group 4 has created 3 project teams as well. So we have a legislative project team that work group 4 is looking at. They are looking at 2 policy proposals, one for the 2020 legislation, one for the 2020 session, and then looking at one that would be a little bit longer term. So the one for the 2020 legislation is really looking at essentially increasing the SNAP outreach dollars for the state. So the legislature last year approved $400,000 for SNAP outreach dollars specifically for rural populations, and they're looking at the possibility of potentially increasing that, and then having that be for related to education, so anywhere from early care and education to all the way through higher ed, to really connect in with some of the governor's priorities. And then their longer term policy priority would be looking at increasing the minimum benefit for WIC and SNAP. So the minimum benefit for both programs can be relatively low for some families, and so thinking about what that would look like to increase it, potentially for specific populations or potentially more broadly. But again, I think recognition that that would be a heavier lift, and that is not a 2020 session item. They also have a project team that's coming together on technology. Again, this is getting really dense, so you will get this in the newsletter as well. They have a project team coming together on technology, which is looking at piloting the telephonic signatures. So Denver Human Services is looking at ways that they can pilot telephonic signatures to complete SNAP applications over the phone. And they're also looking into text message communication and how they can expand texting communication with SNAP participants, but also WIC has a texting system, so there may be some intertwine there. And then lastly, they have a project team that is coming together around cross-program alignment. So that group is going to be defining their objective, because that's still really broad, but there's a lot of interest in kind of reaching the Medicaid population that is not enrolled in WIC or SNAP. That's a high percentage of the Medicaid population that is eligible for those 2 programs and is not enrolled. And we know who those people are. So I think that's not low-hanging fruit, but it's definitely something that is more tangible than some of the other work that could exist within that space. And then lastly, Work Group 5, and luckily this will be short because Work Group 5 is prioritizing next Friday. So they have not selected their projects yet, but they did spend their last meeting reviewing. The Colorado Department of Education had funding from the Health Foundation to do a needs assessment, a year-long needs assessment. And so they were able to present the results from that needs assessment, which was a really helpful, I think, tool and process to go through for that group, and then they'll be prioritizing projects at their next meeting. So if you're interested in child nutrition programs, you are more than welcome to attend that meeting where they'll be figuring out what they're going to be focusing on. So we have lots of things moving and lots of things still to figure out. But again, please connect with Leticia or I if there's anything that you'd like to be connected into. Recommendations you have for improvements. We're kind of building out infrastructure at the same time we're trying to move, so we're going to make some mistakes along the way, so just keep us posted if there's anything that you want us to be thinking about or changing. And then the last thing I just want to mention really briefly with this group is we have on October 14th, the Colorado Health Foundation has pulled together a group of funders. So we're going to be doing a funders convening and talking to different funders kind of about the blueprint, and we're setting an agenda for that now. But I think there's a couple main principles that we're thinking about there. One is getting funders on board for the long term so that the Colorado Health Foundation isn't the only funder of the Blueprint Program Office, but also being really careful that we are not reducing the pot of funding going out to programs and services that are already doing this work. So it is not our intent to say, well, you should redirect funding that you're putting out into the field already and put it through the Blueprint Office. But I do think there's a potential opportunity to expand the amount of funding kind of coming into this space. So again, just kind of knowing that as a primary principle of this convening. But we're excited to be able to connect with some different funders and hopefully recruit some new people into this space. So those are my updates for now. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a couple.
Cool.
Never at a loss for words. What should we be doing in this group to be sure that our work is covered in the newsletter? Is that something that some of our members should be preparing? Is that something that you all as staff prepare?
Yeah, so for
everything.
Yes, to everything. So for this newsletter, we will have an intentional focus on the projects because there's so many project teams that have been started up in the last few weeks. So yeah, I'll be working with you probably. And if anybody has content that they would like put in the newsletter, please let me know. But yeah, I'll be working with the work.
We want you to report to all the other groups what we're doing.
Yes, absolutely. You will be included in that. Yes, yes, yes.
Oh, no, please go ahead. Well, just related, so at the last meeting, you or someone had asked for an update on the funding opportunity.
I was just about to turn to you and ask that.
Yes. So we did want to include an update on that in the newsletter. So my first question is, when do I need to get that to you?
So I don't know if you all have noticed, but we said the newsletter is going to go out every 2 weeks. It's going out every 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So we can have the newsletter go out when I think both of those are really critical pieces of communication for this, planned for this newsletter. Yeah. So if you can have it by the middle of the week, great. If not, I think we can extend that date too.
By the middle of this week?
We're pretty flexible, yeah. Or next week.
Can you give us?
Yeah, so I can give an update. I was thinking, I could sort of talk about the actual grantees, but the truth is that those conversations, there's a few conversations that still need to be had with program officers. So I know some folks have been notified that they are getting grants. Others, I think there's still some kind of negotiation that's happening. So I don't want to get over my skis on that, but I will say that our intent is to support 15 coalitions across the state, and we mapped out where they are at, and there's coverage up in nearly all 4 corners. So super excited. There's some really nice natural clustering of kind of coalitions regionally that could create some opportunity for regional food system improvements. So we've got some along the Eastern Plains. We've got a group in the Southwest. We've got a cluster in the kind of mountain resort region. So we'll have the complete list when we do the update. We did select a group out of Minnesota called Terrasoma. They're going to be the consulting firm that's supporting implementation planning, evaluation capacity building, and coalition development support. They have really deep expertise in food systems, both at a local and a systems level, and they really take sort of a food justice equity approach. So just
really nice alignment with our work here at the foundation, and I think they'll be able to provide some really rich assistance to the coalitions. They are subcontracting with a group called Rainbow Research, and they're also out of Minnesota, and they're going to be providing the evaluation capacity building support. So I will leave it at that. I can answer some questions. Did you have any more specific than that? Okay.
Thank you. I think the reason it's so important, in case you didn't know, is that those coalitions were to work specifically around goal 2 and 3. So we appreciate that.
Yep, and so it's to develop their smaller planning grants, and we will be opening up for the June grant cycle of next year. That's when they'll come in for implementation funding. So we still haven't developed that funding opportunity. We wanted to see sort of who is at the table and what kind of those plans would look like. But this is just the first phase of that work. I will say that the coalitions are all along sort of the continuum of kind of organizations that have been working together for 15 years and some that are brand new and still seeking partners. So there's just a lot to learn. Super excited about the cohort.
I'm sorry. We had a question on the phone asking if you could please repeat the names of the organizations in Minnesota that you were contracting and were subcontracted with.
Terra, Soma, and Rainbow Research.
Anybody else? Anything else on the phone? Great. All right, Sandy.
Hi.
It's you.
Yes, it's me. I'm here to give you some updates on the Food Pantry Assistance Grant, or if you'll let me call it FPAG, that helps us out, to add to your list of acronyms. Since I'm new to this group, I wanted to first find out, for level setting, if anybody needed background information on the FPAG. Everybody knows what it is, that it's money. I bet you're new, so I'm going to pass this to you. Anybody in the room want a piece of paper? Okay. If you want it, if you need it, I know several of you don't, please help yourselves. If you're on the phone and you want background information on this, please either get a hold of me if you have my information, or perhaps email Leticia, right? And I will send it to you electronically. So essentially the concept is money that pantries and food banks can apply for through the state that funnels through a family foundation at this point called Onward. They're located in Cortez. We are in our second year of funding. The funding is being distributed as we speak. It was less this year, much less than last year. So the first year in 2018 was $500,000. And this year, unfortunately, it was $100,000, but still good work to be done with that. And out of that, with the Food Pantry Network at Hunger Free Colorado, so for the pantries that participated that are a part of our network, we got them together as part of their annual gathering to discuss strengths and weaknesses of the program, barriers, how it went. And one of the things we heard from them overwhelmingly was that technical assistance would be really appreciated moving forward. So for some pantries, not knowing really where to start in order to find farmers in their area that are Colorado Proud eligible. Part of the answer with that is to work more closely with the food banks, and part of that is to do a better job of connecting pantries with farmers, ranchers, producers. So we are moving forward with, we had a really great meeting last Monday with partners, many of whom were in the room, Live Well, Children's, FBR, who else? Trish, help me. You were there, share our strength. Anyway, we had a great meeting to talk about how to really build a coalition for this work moving forward, so that in the next legislative session, we can really come at this from a multi-organizational perspective and ask for more money over several years. So in the past, it's been written into the budget on a year-by-year basis, and what we would like to do is push for a bill to get us multi-year funding. The amount that we're thinking about is $1 million per year for 5 years. We talked about whether or not to continue to make it Colorado Proud, and the consensus was that yes, that was a good idea. Rocky Mountain Farmers Union was also in the room. I should mention them, because they're a critical partner in making this successful. And we talked about that technical assistance piece and how to really make that possible and how to work that into the bill. So moving forward, next steps for us at Hunger Free are to draft a bill and then share it with everybody that was in the room, and really anybody else from a policy perspective that's interested in seeing that and weighing in on that, and then really having it ready to go. We'd like to have one more in-person meeting to kind of discuss and agree on everything. And if you're interested and weren't there last Monday, we welcome you to be a part of it. So again, same, reach out to me or Leticia if you're interested in participating in the next in-person meeting about the SPAG before we launch it. I'm sure I left many questions unanswered, so fire away. There are pantry leaders on the phone, like Lindsay Williams, who can speak to it from their perspective of the actual implementation. Not to put you on the spot, Lindsay, I just want to recognize that there are others on the call and in the room that have that perspective of how successful or what the challenges have been.
Yeah, I can talk about it a little bit. So the first cycle was a little bit tricky because funds were released kind of in the middle of winter, but it actually worked out really well for us. We really have food receiving down here in Alamosa, and I think it's pretty common statewide, is access to like fresh meats and other proteins. And so since it was kind of in an off cycle, that's what we pursued to procure, and ended up making a lot of great relationships with farmers, ended up enrolling like 3 or 4 new farms in Colorado Proud. Everyone was super helpful at the state level and also at Hunger Free, just kind of, figuring out what this looks like. But we were able to offer meat to everybody on a weekly basis when normally we only are able to do that on a monthly basis. So it actually worked out really well, and we're really excited about the second.
Thanks for chiming in, Lindsay. I'd also want to mention that in terms of kind of looking forward and what we could do better, we talked a lot last week about not confusing producers, because there's a lot of farm to institution and a lot of other wonderful wins from Live Well and others that's been going on, and great work in the space. So we're conscious and wanting to be thoughtful about how to not only involve them in the conversation, but advertise it to farmers that don't know about this opportunity in a way that won't confuse them. And we welcome your feedback on that. Are there any other questions? If they pop up, please send them to me. I might lean on Lindsay Kerner, who's exiting, as you know, a little bit, but we'll get you answers if you have questions that pop up after today.
Great, thanks, Sandy. And just as a quick background for that, for those of you who either weren't here last meeting or potentially forgot what we talked about, we identified 4 priorities as a work group, and so 2 of those priorities were really already being led by other entities. So the Blueprint is not creating new project teams around those priorities, and Hunger Free's work around the Food Pantry Assistance Grant was something that really came up strongly as one of the priorities that this group selected, was around increasing healthy food access for food banks and food pantries, and this grant does exactly that. So we decided to just continue to support Hunger Free's initiative around increasing the Food Pantry Assistance Grant versus trying to create another separate work group that would be doing something duplicative. So thank you for providing that update, and again, if people are interested in engaging in that, please feel free to contact Hunger Free, and we'll continue to provide updates to this work group as well. The other priority that we identified as a work group was around...
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Real quick? Sandy, what legislators are you already working with? Do you know?
Last year it was the Joint Budget Committee, and so the legislators that were there, with trying to make it a bill this year, it's going to be everybody. And we're trying to identify, our policy folks at Hunger Free and Live Well and others are trying to identify, and Rocky Mountain Farmers Union, right, are trying to identify the best legislators to really engage with. So I'm happy to get back to you. I think that will come in the coming weeks with lobbyists and policy teams, more so than what I can answer for you.
Oh, I do think that's important to keep us abreast of that. I mean, we're very close to our legislators and would be more than happy to bend their ear about how important this is. And I'm sure there are other people on this committee who can do
Yes.
that as well.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. And I'll definitely report back to the group on, as that develops, I will be happy to get back to you.
Great.
And I think bigger than that, it's just like, how can we better support? I think that's definitely what I said in the meeting, is like, once the produce is there, we'd love to help out, but what can we do to help get I know it's produce, protein, and dairy, right, the funds available. I think this group, but then also, if there's specific asks of us, I think we all are really excited and willing to help.
Thank you. It will be through, and we'll make that possible through our advocacy network for sure. We'll be putting out the things that you can sign, the people that you can call. So thank you for that, and that is super important. It's how it's going to happen.
Sandy, really quick, one more question. Darren had a good question. So right now it's year by year.
Correct.
Ultimately, we'd like to do it multi-year, correct? And there's reasons behind having to do it annually currently versus pushing for something that's sunset.
There was a reason. Scott, our lobbyist, mentioned a meeting last Monday. Is anybody that was there, remember?
I just remember him saying that it was easier to get through if it was annual, and that the 5-year sunset, like we had to put a sunset on it.
Right.
Because there were just people that were never going to sign something unless it had an end date, so that's what I heard.
Yeah, I remember him saying that was the downside of proposing even this year to do a multi-year, that, because we were kind of going back and forth about whether to propose it from the outset with a sunset. And he said we can try it without, but that with it, there will always be somebody who won't pass it until that. So going back to, I think there was legislative support on the Joint Budget Committee to really see it through. I think that was part of it, in just being able to kind of get it in that first year. We requested $1 million and we got $500,000 that first year, so that felt like a big success. And so with that success, we thought we would do it that way again the second year. But yeah, great question.
I just also think it's important to add, there was really some thoughtfulness around the amounts too. So just like, as an outsider, I was kind of like, how did we get there? And why did we pick that number? And why did we, but there was a lot of thoughtfulness around the amounts because they did get requests. And so looking at how much people asked for versus how much we could realistically, like how much pantries asked for, how much we could realistically ask for, collectively and get passed, and then what the need was. So just also, so folks know that I think that Hunger Free is in a lot of thoughtfulness around like what's the need, but also what's realistic to get hopefully passed.
Right.
So that was helpful for me to understand that background.
Thank you for that reminder too. I had jotted down a couple of interesting data points from this current $100,000 that's being distributed as we speak. And so the application process for that went to the On-Road Foundation in Cortez, just in terms of need, even though there was only $100,000 to be distributed, $400,000 was requested. And as with last time, when $500,000 was available and over $2.1 million was requested, this year, with only $100,000 available, $2.7 million was requested in open-ended question. Let me rephrase that. The On-Road Foundation in their application said if there were no limit to what you could request, how much could you spend on Colorado Proud Produce in a fiscal year? And in aggregate, the total was $2.7 million. So it's gone up. And I think it just demonstrates the need, and goes back to why we're hoping to ask for $1 million.
Is there data available that you all would have or someone may have that says what we believe the unmet need at food pantries and food banks looks like?
What we can speak to at Hunger Free is just through the client data, the client survey that we make available to pantries that are part of our network and that they've been administering since 2015. It's approximately 4,000 responses, unduplicated at this point. And across those responses, 83% of clients at pantries in our network anyway have expressed that either they wish that there were either more protein, more dairy, more produce. Does that sort of answer what you're, yeah.
I think that's germane to part of our discussion today. So anybody else? Questions for Sandy? Anybody on the phone? We had a couple of people come in. If you'd like to introduce yourself and who you're here representing.
Lee Morris. I'm here with Family Tree Market and the Fresh Low project.
And, yes.
Hi, Andrea Viglian with CO4F.
Okay, Erin, will you explain to us what we're going to do and a little bit more about the background and the questions and so on?
Yep, of course. So I just referenced kind of the 4 priority areas that this group decided on at our last meeting, one of we just heard a lot about. And then at our next work group meeting, we'll also have a presentation from Live Well Colorado. They have a board retreat this morning, so we're unable to attend today, but to talk a little bit about healthy food incentives for Colorado families, so things like double bucks and increasing incentives. They have a coalition and a statewide advisory board already kind of engaged around that, so that's another project we are not creating within the blueprint, but will be informed about and identify opportunities for blueprint stakeholders to kind of link into that work. So again, they're taking the lead on that, but they'll be presenting back to this group and being able to kind of talk with us about opportunities for collaboration. So that we identified, or they're not projects, strategies that we identified at the last meeting were really around increasing the number of WIC and SNAP authorized retailers, as well as improving the customer experience within those retailers, and increasing access to nutrition education where people are accessing food. So those are 2 still relatively broad topics, but they're less broad than goals 2 and 3, which is increasing access to food at a community level, both purchased and non-purchased. So yay for us in narrowing it down a little bit. But we are going to spend the rest of the time today breaking out into project teams. And so we'll be convening around those 2 topic areas. Donna is going to be facilitating the nutrition education project team, and I will be facilitating the WIC and SNAP retailer project team. And I think the real objectives for today are to kind of figure out what next steps look like for each one of those. So is there data that we still need? Are there potential projects already on the horizon that we could be considering and kind of moving forward with? We'd also really like to identify project leads today. So we're thinking about project teams right now as 12-month timelines. That doesn't mean that a project will be complete in 12 months, but we want to be thinking about kind of action planning for the next 12 months. So the commitment for a project lead would essentially be to help to facilitate and plan project team meetings for the next 12 months, obviously with support from our office, particularly around logistics. So that's really the goal of the project teams. And again, as we break out into those teams, we'll have a better way to do that. And Andrew and Leticia on the phone, or sorry, more facilitated questions to do that. On the phone, do we want to do breakout rooms or do we want to do 2 computers? What's the easiest for people on the phone? How do they join a group, or what's the best way for them?
I think we'll have to do breakout groups.
Okay.
And then just bring a computer to each of the groups.
Okay. So do you need people to choose on the phone which group they want to go to, or can you set up the breakout groups that they can see?
Yeah, I think we need people to choose.
Okay. So if those of you on the phone can type in the chat box which project team you would like to join, we'll bring a laptop to whichever project team, to both of the project teams, and you will be included in those conversations. I'm going to take just a quick 5-minute break, but let's have the WIC and SNAP retailer group meet over on this side of the room, and then we'll have the nutrition ed group meet back in this corner, and we can use the lobby if we need to as well, I assume.
And can we move the tables?
Sure.
Accordingly, I mean, if we want to.
Sure.
Do we have flip chart paper? Or we're just, somebody's going to take a lot of notes?
Somebody's going to take a lot of notes.
Can you
please say the groups
Do you want to?
So the 2 project teams are the WIC and SNAP retailers, increasing the amount of WIC and SNAP authorized retailers, or increasing access to nutrition education where people access food.
What was that?
It may be loud for the people in the room, or in the same room.
Oh, on the phone.
So we'll take a quick 5-minute break and we'll figure out logistics while we're doing that.
Okay. Don't leave, come back in 5 minutes.
No, I would only go.
Sort of.
Probably. No, I got 2 full days, and, you know, so, fine, anyway. I can go.
Is that what it is? You're having a meeting for next year, and you have like a meeting scheduled for next week. Oh, nice. Okay, yeah. And what is? Yeah. My mouth.
So I do,
What's going on? What's your unique energy assistant now? What's in mind? Okay, yeah, talk about. Essentially providing an intervention.
we're piloting
like social isolation.
Catholic in Colorado. So I go into
Okay, well, very good.
I will read you the.
Oh, we're in the, I will, first 5 minutes before it got here. Yeah, keep this in mind. Yeah, not only the solutions, but also weatherization of homes. Yeah, facility assistance, like Band-Aid and the longer. I did it a few times, like, I had to get over it. I need to meet. My LED light. We've got both,
I didn't go.
volunteers already. Okay, drop them off. Got it, okay. I was like, oh, light bulb. Yeah, no, I'm just gonna drop it all off. Okay. Can you, if you talk to her, be like, what relationship you have with Internet Radio? Like, because we love working with Energy Outreach Colorado, how do you all work together? Yeah, I'm learning a lot, because we're not in direct service, we funnel out. So that I do not believe they are a utility assistance agency, they're getting their funding directly from us. To be able to say, because, so the federal government's got more funding this year for outreach. So they're, they're leap, significantly this is actually, because the need's going away. No. So you. Always a pleasure. Yeah, find another way. And so, there's that between Littleton and South Denver. We got the happy hour. Actually, that's in your hood then, or between Littleton and South Denver. Yes. That is Southwest. I'm in Southwest. Yeah, so I just moved up south and like, and I have the world like, but also like 20 minutes from like Don Denver.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
pretty quick.
Yeah, I'm not too far. I'm on Galen, and then from there, about what?
Which one are you gonna do?
Oh, yeah.
Because I used to live at. We have no yard.
Yeah, that's where my husband lives. I love it.
And then it doesn't go the other way. Yeah, and then it's. They're on it, man. You know, I was excited about it until, a week after we.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll have raccoons.
Tuna got sprayed. Oh, okay, all right. She got sprayed and then more stuff. We can see that idea that when. I feel badly for you tremendously. What was that you're doing, sorry? Yeah. Yeah. You're doing great, Joe. What was, which Harper? All right, so for people in the room, we're going to do nutrition education in this room, and we're actually going to move to the Wick and Snap retailers to the room right next door. Nutrition education in here. Yes.
Oh, I can go grab some, I didn't know.
You have markers.
All right, I'll go.
No, you're good. Carry on. My wonky flower. Yeah. And do you have markers?
I don't.
That's going, I just was trying to mark that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Which is, we're gonna go to
In the back?
I don't know which one of you.
In the back, yes. There's a bag inside
So
there.
who's staying for nutrition education? Let's come over here. Wick and Snap is going in the
You got three, I got three.
Just be unique. No, we'll of course have Megan.
Sure.
Yeah.
And your audio.
Well, good.
I know, and we knew that.
Oranges are so good.
That is not size.
Small group, exactly.
No, they're still distinguishing, not a building.
Do we have any people online that are in this group? Should we use these things? Okay. Should we take towards them? Far back.
Just sitting where we are.
Oh, well, they actually have a million to raise, but, not, no, we put it. Hello. Just trying to.
Can people on the phone hear us?
Here you go.
Excuse me.
I apologize if that's me.
No. Yes. Oh, there's two, the bigger one. Yes. And I, yeah, yes, and the others, yes, and. Not in a while, I knew them years ago, I don't think I've done. So, there's.
Okay, do you have the, one pager that you gave Donna? Do you have another copy of that?
I can use, but there's like, yeah. Here's one house. Yeah, they've been somewhere. Oh, yeah, we have plenty of dinner. We get a lot. Oh, I got these things. Oh, you don't, I'm sorry. The most houses.
Go this way, Mark. Take us over here. Can we just go back through? They can hear you. Okay, so if we could just real quick, say who you are again and who you're representing. Oh, I need to have a mic. Greg. And so say who you are and who you're representing again. You're a university type, I know that.
My name is Evan Stout, and, representing no one right now.
Sandy with Hunger Free Colorado.
Glebe Morris, Family Tree Market, Freshlow Project.
Megan Bradley, Cooking Matters.
I'm only speaking about.
Becca Boone, CDE School Nutrition Unit.
Elise Lubell, Jeffco Public Health. Excuse me, Erin Pulling, Food Bank of the Rockies.
And Donna Garnett, Freshlow. Who's on the phone with us in this group?
Hi, it's Lane with Denver Department of Public Health and Environment. I think I'm supposed to be in the other group though, so I'll look up that.
Okay, goodbye. So what we want to do, to start with, is let's just spend about 10, 15 minutes saying what is happening in the way of nutrition education.
Can we talk about something more basic?
Okay.
Like, what is nutrition education?
Okay, what is nutrition education? Sure.
And I am not a nutrition educator. I work with nutrition educators. I think it's really challenging. So I'm not sure what we're trying to look at, because I think everyone can benefit from nutrition education, not just recipients. Okay? From where they get, I mean, everyone needs it. So
So I guess I'm not exactly sure what my question is, but, so I'm not sure what my question is.
I think they're really perfect questions, because I already had in my mind, like, after we talk about cooking matters, I'm gonna talk about a different approach that involves cooking matters in other ways. So what are we talking about when we say nutrition education and food benefits? Right, everybody from your perspective. Yeah. Okay.
And I just want to hope that this is a safe space, so I am from a nutrition education program, and we have a way of doing it, but there are other ways of doing it. I think it's very important to make sure that we have all people at the table, that there's not a right or wrong way or right or wrong food. So I just want to say that in case people are like, yep, I feel uncomfortable, so just, yeah, in case you don't know me, that's how I feel. So now you know, safe place. So I think it is worth saying, like, what does that look like? What do we mean by that? But I also think it's maybe worth repeating. We had said to increase nutrition education where people access food, right? So I think that's an important part of this goal. So I don't know if that's helpful, but it narrows it.
Well,
but also
wait, say it again, we're all people.
Well, I don't know if it said all, I don't know.
Well, no, but we're people.
Yeah, access food.
So isn't that all of us everywhere?
Yeah, but
Or
I think that's narrowing it.
something, well, I don't know, to me that broadens it.
Yeah.
So I'm not, that's what I'm saying, I don't know if we're thinking about it in a certain way versus low-income people accessing food versus all. Sounds fine?
Yeah, I think it's good.
You want to talk about your perspective, because you have something?
My perspective for nutrition is always going to be segmentation. So, segmentation.
Sure.
And I don't think about segmentation with respect to income, though. I think about it with respect to health. So everyone kind of has different health needs. And so when you say nutrition education, my thought goes to who are we talking about? Are we talking about diabetics? Are we talking about single moms, families, obese? Are we talking about, cancer, recovering people? Are we talking about normal people that just have regular diets? So it's more about the segmentation to be able to kind of get to the core of what nutrition is to that person, because it's going to be different.
Yeah, I think it kind of reminds me of that quote, like, who participates in agriculture? Well, every time we eat, we're participating in agriculture. So, like, every time we're eating, there can be nutrition education every time we consume anything. And, I agree that we need to kind of parse it out into what does nutrition ed really mean and what our goal is.
If we sort of, I have to say something. I get to talk, right, even though I'm up here, right? Okay. Of course. For about 28 years, I have this one on, so hopefully I speak fairly loudly. For about 28 years, I have had a specific approach to nutrition education, and that is to work with children and to work with children in their school setting, okay? And Cooking Matters has sometimes played a really important part of that. The approach that my organization uses is to work through a network of schools, and that every school dedicates some of its land mass to growing food and to therefore educating kids. It's about who participates in agriculture. Well, you're always doing nutrition education if you're out there pulling weeds or planting carrots or whatever else you're doing. So for me, children are the key to changing our nutritional patterns across the whole lifespan. Kids are really compelling to their family members, their adult family members. And I got quoted in a newspaper article just this morning and said, the kids come in and say, I learned about tomatoes today and I want a tomato. Well, very few parents are going to say, no, you can never have a tomato unless they're allergic. So for me, children are really central to this whole thing.
That makes me wonder if, I just think it's so hard because we could just spend hours rabbit holing down, like to your point, like we all touch it. It all means something different depending on where you're coming from. So could a first step even be some type of mapping of all the people who are doing it and how we're doing it and who we're serving? Like if you're serving people who are in remission from cancer, who live in this like, then, okay, we know that that pocket might be covered. Or if you're serving kids in the classroom, that pocket might be covered. And maybe seeing where there are gaps, because I mean, as someone who has committed my profession to nutrition, obviously I believe everyone should have it and it should be everywhere and it should feel good to everybody. But I think it's worth saying, because I think, yeah, that made me, your comment made me kind of spin where I was like, oh my gosh, that could be 1,000 things, you know? So I don't know if that would help to like do some type of assessment of what's already going on. And I don't know if it helps to see the gaps or just acknowledge what we already have. But I don't know if that exists, so also feel free to name it if it exists.
This is Lane on the phone, just to jump on that point. There's a similar kind of resource that was created by a foundation in the Virginia, Maryland, DC region called the Food Learning Locator, where they reached out to all the nonprofit organizations within their region who were conducting nutrition education and created a map resource. I'll put the link in the chat, but I think it really helps to figure out where those overlaps and gaps were for that region. And, you know, it didn't necessarily solve the system as a whole, but it was much easier to understand how and where to send different types of folks for different types of needs as well.
Great, and you said you would put that link in the chat so that we could share it among us? Did I hear that right?
I'll do that right now.
Great, thank you. I'm actually thinking about on the back side of this, I wanted to ask, does Hunger Free have this? Is this interactive that we could go on your website and click on the little flags?
It's not, it just represents, as far as I know,
Okay.
in one state, there's a state where it's editable, but we wouldn't want it sweet, right? So that just represents, the pantries that receive.
That receive the grant.
Receive the funding the first year.
Okay.
And just, to give a sense of geographic diversity and the numbers of clients at each that were served, that pantry or food bank serves.
Okay. Okay. So one particular project idea might be developing this mapping.
Well, and I think too, like building, public will might not be the right word, but like shared, like no matter where I would hope that no matter where we're coming from, like on the spectrum of nutrition education, we all are we're all lifting each other up, if that makes sense, because sometimes I do think we get pitted against each other, like, well, you focus on kids, and I focus on adults, and you focus on whatever, and there's only so much money in the pot, or whatever, and so I was trying to think of like, how could we also find shared language around that, so that, like, we want everybody to have it, and how do we get there? But I think sometimes we do have to segment ourselves to get the funding that's out there, and so, one, I'm making like an assumption, and you all can say no, I disagree, that like, we do all agree that like, always lead to a good ending, and then like, it feels like right now, sometimes we all focus on different things, and how do we create one voice to raise and elevate like the good work that's happening, so.
I think part of that for me gets into like levels in terms of how you're going to approach nutrition education though, because are we talking about this in terms of like daily recommended, piece, or are we talking about generically, or are we talking about a little more, targeted? So there are different approaches to that, and I would think about this type of initiative being a little more general, to kind of getting away from those kind of details and kind of into a more generic kind of space, to where we're talking to larger bodies about general nutrition, and because that'll be more applicable to more people, kind of particularly within the group or the segment that we're kind of talking to. So I think, you just made me think about, well, at what level would you be kind of targeting that?
Well, and then the shared, like, the need for like, shared messaging, because I know that, Colorado Department of Human Services just did a social marketing campaign where they did survey, in this case, low-income families, to hear what messages would resonate with them, because it wasn't about like eat half a cup of peas, it was about like general, and so like can we all be on board with these like general themes of nutrition education or general themes of messaging? Because I know that we'll all go off on our own paths, depending, I would assume, depending on like how it's going to resonate with the population we're serving. But if there were some general things, because I think that's one of the things that sometimes hurts us in the nutrition education field, is that we contradict each other on a secondly basis. You know, and so I think to your point, like it needs to be general, but also needs to be like shared so that they're not like, well, I just heard from this community that I should never eat an apple, and you just told me to eat 2 apples. And it's like, well, just.
But that's also where the segmentation comes in, because if we're talking about those apples, like we're talking kids,
Yeah.
for example, then that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, but if you're not, if you're talking to somebody else that may not make as much sense, apples generally make sense for everyone. But in general, you kind of see what I'm saying. So I think the segmentation will play a role in that communication a little bit, so that we get more applicable messages to the right people.
Yeah, I think applicable messages is the key, and I think giving people the, tangible resources to let them act on the education is also important. So if we're telling people, you need to eat this amount of greens or protein or whatever, but they're not getting those things at a food pantry, or they don't know how to cook those things in a way that, is accessible to them, it kind of, the education then falls short. So I think we definitely need to focus on either, recipes or ways, tools that, the education can be used.
And I want to talk about a little bit about the intersectionality of it, because you can't think about food if you're not going to think about how do we get food? Where does it come from? What are the policies and systems, the environmental factors that affect people's ability to procure, prepare, distribute, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, it's huge. I mean, so I'm not here to make it bigger, because it's huge. But how do we focus on, number one, when we talk about kids, we're looking at future policymakers. That if we want to look at land use, not to get into the weeds too much, but, who grows food locally, and what happens with climate change? And so, yes, there's the day-to-day, what do I do with this kohlrabi, which I still don't know what to do with. Which is like, I don't want any more recipes on it, because I don't care about kohlrabi. So I have a bias, and I know it. Because I probably had trauma. I had kohlrabi trauma. I think as a earlier CSA member. But, it's huge. And again, I think we have to look at segmentation. And from an equity perspective, people need different things. And how do we figure out who needs what and have the similar messaging? I think that we need more pervasive messaging about eating healthy, but it's not about, it's so complicated. So I'd love to see, I'm just not sure, these are all really important.
They are really important. I see some things coming out of this. I don't know that we actually know the whole, what the waterfront looks like in terms of, just like you said, knowing who's doing what and what's working and what's good and.
Yeah, no, I think that first point, the map is a really good. I don't think that you can find people in really Colorado or Denver to be able to put a finger on how nutrition services closest to them. They don't really know. They'll just Google it and just try to figure it out. But it's pretty dispersed. So I think what a map will really show are the gaps in that, and that's something we're dealing with kind of in our side, where people have to come all the way down for some basic services, even though there is a clinic, Denver Health, kind of right there,
Khalid and I both work on the Fresh Low project. He's our grocery partner, but he has a bigger vision than just selling food.
So I'm just really just pointing out that the gap there in doing an asset mapping around nutritional services is something that I don't know exists for the Denver.
Well, and I love the idea that it can be sortable, because I think to your point, people come to it for different reasons. Like, am I looking for diabetes prevention? Am I looking for cooking? Like, how to use the food resources that I'm getting in a food pantry? Am I looking, I think there's also the I have to know my own bias. Like, I have a bias that everyone cares about nutrition. And I know that that's not true. Like, that's not the world that I get it. And so I also think there's something about that too, like, what is the messaging?
What do you mean you have a bias?
So, like, I believe, like, I already have a value. Like, I believe that health, like, that nutritious food is important and worth investing in. But I know that, like, that's not always the case. And so I think there's also this idea of, like, how are we speaking to people to build a value? Because if you're worried about where you're going to sleep at night, like, you're not as worried about kohlrabi, right? Because you have other needs, you basic needs to be met. So I was just trying to think about that too. So I think there's something to be said about mapping it and having it be able to be designated based on what you're really looking for your own needs. But then I also just want to own that piece that just by being in this group, we probably all have a value around nutrition education. And so I also think it's worth having the voice of someone who's like, no, I don't think it's worth it, and it sucks, and I don't have time for it, or whatever. Because I think sometimes I feel I don't do as good of a job of bringing that voice to the table.
I absolutely agree. This is Jess Harper, and I absolutely agree. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're not interrupting. Jump in, because we have a tendency not to see you, so we don't think to stop and let you talk. So please jump in.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that I absolutely agree with that, and someone else had mentioned sort of taking a step back and looking at the intersectionality of it all, and I think that with the power that we have in this group and with the connections that we have to the blueprint, we have the power to do something on a pretty big level, and I think it's worth us having at least a conversation around what that looks like, thinking about what our impact can be, given the resources that we have in this group, for some sustainable, big impact change. So just want to kind of affirm that and sort of throw that out there.
I'll come back to you in just a second, Khalid, but I want to segue for just a minute back to my question to you a little while ago about what legislators, because not every legislator shares that value with us, okay? And I spent the first 35 years of my life working in public policy at the state level, and I will tell you that nothing at the state level matters as much as me calling up my legislator and saying, I want to take you for a cup of tea, and I want to talk to you about something really important that you're not thinking of. And I think that's the value of what we have with the blueprint. There's nothing like the grassroots and the grass tops and that grassroots smashing everything up to the grass tops. So I was there for so long, and I feel differently. It all happens at the local level, and so don't forget us out here, okay? We have a lot of power at the grassroots level. So I interrupted you. Go ahead, please.
No, I was thinking, I thought you made a good point, and it really made me think about going back to the maps and how, at the end of the day, we have to layer this back to these access points. And you think about food pantries and that sort of thing. So when I think about this map, I'm thinking about it in layers in terms of, yes, the nutritional services piece, but also having the next layer of those food pantries and kind of where those access points are, so that you can kind of merge together the two ideas from, yes, there's a value point to nutrition. It's kind of like we kind of have to put a value point on it, even though they don't, and part of that happens at that access level, right, to where when the pantry is either providing information or wherever the case may be, there's an awareness, there's an understanding of materials or what, of close or available, or we're trying to put a finer point on making sure that there are nutritional services that are kind of close to them, so that they can kind of point in those directions where they need to, and then make sure they're in compliance with whatever needs are necessary for that area.
I think I added that identifying access point. Again, I come back to say,
this population of the universe is not nearly as big as this one. And we can't forget that what happens in school cafeterias and food that's coming in is really building the nutritional health of children. And that's what's happening.
Well, and it gets to funding, and people don't understand how schools fund their cafeteria, they don't understand about USDA reimbursement, they don't understand it's not part of general fund, they don't understand, and all they do is complain, is my perception of school food sucks, is the narrative. And that is, I don't know if it's true or not, but I think it's a bad narrative.
What would you
I said it's not. I mean, it depends, but.
It depends, exactly, it's uneven. So, I mean, how do we even, like, change from a public health perspective, we support our public schools to try, I don't know, be better, do it better, they have constraints, it's complicated. It is complicated. But I think the narrative hinders progress in terms of getting more money, changing the way procurement is done, a food hub, I mean, all that logistics is going to stay, constrained until we can either change the narrative or the messaging or something. There's a disconnect that doesn't make it better, get it better. I don't know, but we hear this all the time, and it's very frustrating on how to make it better.
Yeah, I just want to say that the school nutrition unit just received the Colorado Health Foundation grant. We found out yesterday, a pretty big one, and that is through the needs assessment that we did in our office. Really, stigma was one of the top priorities, and meal quality in our office. So we are having several conversations about how to improve the stigma of school lunch and how to improve the meal quality. So those are conversations that are happening daily at the state agency level, and so we're going to be working really hard to implement some changes. And school lunch doesn't suck. I've had really great school lunches. I've seen some not so great school lunches, and there are a lot of barriers. But just being at the table, I think I can help bring that side of what school lunch really is and around the state. And so if anybody has specific questions about procurement in schools, that is actually my area of specialty in our office. So yeah, lots of conversations are happening, and we're just excited to go forward.
I want to make sure it gets out to people.
It is an important part of the message. I would go so far, since we're talking about nutrition education, that schools have another role besides providing lunch. The schools that we're working with in Freshlow, we have 7 schools. Every one of them has some form of nutrition education now as part. Some have cooking matters, some have something else, and something else, and something else.
I'm sorry. I work as a secretary for the schools, so I know the lunch cafeteria really is not that bad. But I think we can give different organizations the funding, the support, but I think we're missing the connection with the communities and the families itself, because most of the schools have salad bars, but how many parents we actually have coming into a building, to a school, with Happy Meals, with Taco Bell.
Yeah.
So they're actually missing the concept about nutrition and what is good nutrition for a home environment. And I think until we provide that information, find resources that can actually go into communities and say, this is what you have, and this is how you can actually make it nutritious. Because, anything we can, it's our choice on how we bake it, how we cook it. It's totally up to us. You can give me a celery and I can make it into the most fattening thing. Or I can make it into a salad, or I can make it nutritious. And I think that's one of the things that we need to find ways to bring that information and to bring that education into communities and to actually families, that they can use the resources.
Absolutely, all of that. And I think that is part of our shared messaging. That's a challenge to the school systems. School systems are notorious for not actually engaging beyond their walls. And don't even get me started down that. I already had hateful email messages about that topic this morning. But if the singular biggest whatever chaos that was experienced at the state capitol this past session was the discussion that went on way past midnight till like 3 o'clock in the morning on whether or not and how sex education was supposed to be delivered. What if we had that discussion that went way into the night at the legislature about we want nutrition education in every school. We want it to be a part of every science program. It can be part of early literacy. It can be every school has a little garden or a big garden. But that would be a change maker. Not about changing the lunch program, because I would have to agree. I eat lunch with my granddaughter at least once every week. And I know that it's a good lunch program, but I watch all those little first graders. They pick out the one thing they like, and the rest of it goes in the compost bin. Now, I sit at the table and I'm telling them, did you know what that does for your, that will make you so strong. So we have to think about where does the shared messaging go? Where does it go, and what are the avenues for getting it out?
Well, and it sounds like, what are the, policy opportunities for nutrition education? You gave an example of schools, but are there policies that would support food banks and food pantries, or, because I do think some of it comes down to resources, right? So, we can only do what we can do for the nonprofit I work for, because we only have so much money. So, I think policy to drive value, but also money.
Could I ask this question, from a systems level, and being new to this group, I'm not sure if retailers have been involved in the discussion, but it just seems like one of the tools in the box, and one of the voices that we would love to be at the table. Have we, the Blueprint, the work groups, have we reached out to the retailers?
To who? To
retailers.
Retailers?
Grocers.
Yeah, they're
I don't know.
somewhat engaged, but, Levers for Save a Lot is here, but I think what's hard is getting them to come, sustain, and stay in this group versus go to, increasing Wake and Snap in the retail setting. I think it's hard because sometimes we need to probably do a better job of making the connection, and I know as we've tried to work with retailers, there has to be a value add to their business. One of the specific strategies was specific to retailers, that we talked about on the goals, right? Yeah. And I'm trying to remember what that goal was around.
The retailers was actually in 2, 3.
Yeah, it was, but it was increasing WIC and SNAP, grocery, retail settings or food settings that accept it, but then also the customer experience with that. So that's the group that's convening outside of here, and so I think.
It was also about getting retailers to participate in the food rescue type issues.
I think that's a good point.
I just wonder from the biggest picture perspective, we need the Walmarts and the Safeways and the King Soopers to at least participate in the conversation and hopefully some of the strategies. And I hear you on how it's been up until now, is there needs to be a value add for their regional people to be here.
Especially the small retailers in more food desert areas.
Well, probably we lobby organizations too, Dairy Council, Meat Council, Sugar Council.
Well, Lisa, there's some problem. What was that old? There's a commercial, milk does the body good. Well, in fact, milk doesn't do the body good.
No, I know.
Do you have a?
Anyway,
I would say, I'm a little cynical with respect to retailers, because that industry is as we start talking about groceries, I don't think they'll be that interested, unless they're forced. And I think that ultimately, that's sort of where the discussion goes with institutions in general. I'm not questioning the school lunch things, but I know hospitals haven't gotten this right. I know that for a fact. So it's a challenge for institutions with respect to nutrition and nutrition education, because most of the time it's more of a line item in their budget that they sort of outsource to a particular group to do versus having a more outlined plan, you know, or having a process in place for how they go about, you know, qualifying. You start talking about levels of nutrition, how they start talking about how do they qualify what is nutritious and is not nutritious for a group, segment, an individual, et cetera, et cetera. That's, a lot of the time it's not defined for an institution, and it's not going to be unless they're forced to. So I think that when you really start talking about whether it's grocer at the retail level or whether even at the institutional piece, you really kind of get more into what is the standard for them, what do they have to do, right? And then you start talking from a legislation perspective of what makes the most sense for normal kind of behavior or routines for some of these groups. And then once you set that standard, I think it's easier for them to be more engaged, you know, but asking them to be more engaged resource-wise without them having to gets into, do you put a value on nutrition or health in that way? And that's where you're going to get a varied response, and most of the time the answer is probably no. Not to be too cynical, I don't want to get a downer on that, but I just.
I don't know who drives what. Do consumers drive the market, or does the market drive consumers?
Well, with respect to retailers, that market is different, because you're talking about the consumer piece. Most of the time they're dealing with distributors.
No, but I'm talking about the nutrition education messaging, getting back to what you were saying, the value add, which is, as a consumer, if I have to, hopefully never have to be in a hospital, but I want the food to be really delicious, healthy, culturally sensitive, et cetera. So as a consumer, I can make demands, and you just said how many calls a legislator gets, all of a sudden it's like there's a problem. So if people were educated sufficiently, getting back to the messaging on, it's my right to have healthy food, I want it everywhere, I want access, I want to go anywhere and not have to think, oh, I can't eat at this restaurant because the food's not healthy, or I can't go to this store because they don't have enough whatever. I mean, how do we get that so it creates the demand? So then, you know, at the legislature, there's 3 a.m. discussions on nutrition education and messaging and stuff, because right now, I think, unfortunately, it's true what you said, which is lots of folks don't see it as a...
Yeah, or it's like they see it as a value, but it's not accessible, you know what I mean? So I think there's also, like, when I think about policy, there's like, you know, nutrition education embedded in the school system, but there's also insurance paying for nutrition education and valuing preventative care over that. So, but I think that idea of like, what are the low-hanging fruit for policy, but also what are the seeds we can plant for the future, similar to the like 2020, this is what we can do that Erin was talking about, and then like long-term. But I think, I don't know who was saying it, but we do have a voice, right? And how do we think about that voice around policy? That's not my comfort zone, but hopefully someone else has that strength on the phone or here, who can help with that.
And I don't think we can get there with policy until we know what we have available.
Exactly.
You know, we did some test pop-up little cooking demos and education at Mold Pantry this summer. Great, well received. Are we hitting the right areas? Where is it needed? Like, I don't feel like we have that perspective yet. Yeah.
Well, and creating, I think also creating a space for all, like the map, I think would allow us to like see all the options, because I think I can list this like 6 people I know, but like we need more than 6 people that I know to be doing this. So I think it just goes back to the importance of the map and like that shared messaging policy.
I think also tapping into like unique, just coming from the school perspective, like PE teachers and PE associations and the health and wellness. There's like actually a health and wellness unit at CDE. You know, like there are wellness policies written at schools that can be integrated into nutrition ed. So like really thinking outside of the box, like how do we get PE teachers involved in nutrition ed, or science teachers, or, you know, and I'm sure in our own perspective, like areas, we can think about really unique partnerships. So
Well, I'm thinking about where it's being done and then where there are access points. So like there's a parent liaison who sits on the wellness committee for each school. And that person obviously has a value and is connected. So I think it's about where is it happening, but also where are there access points. So like maybe it's not happening, but the PE teacher or like, I think they were on here, but integrated nutrition education program. Like I want to make sure that we're mapping out who's doing it, but also where there could be points, especially the easy points that will let us wiggle right in and grow.
And who we're targeting, is it individuals or is it food pantries as entities? There's a lot we could do, you know, on the freight could do or on the.
Okay. Yeah. Is there anybody, I just want to make sure on the phone, I have been talking a lot. Does anybody on the phone want to add anything?
Lane or Dana?
I don't think Dana can hear us.
Oh, okay. Lane switched to the other as well.
I can hear you guys. I can't hear in the other room.
Oh, okay.
You're forced to listen to us.
Nope, no worries.
Did you want to add something?
No, I don't have anything to add right now. Thank you.
Okay, great. So it sort of seems like we're coming back to kind of these three things, with this being the first thing. I don't mean necessarily to say that the others all flow, but it seems like we want to start there. Does that resonate with people? Does that seem right?
Well, and I'm still unclear, so can we request funds from the blueprint to support the work to do this mapping?
Well, other work groups have.
Okay. Because that's what I think is like seeing the data.
I can't speak for the foundation or the blueprint, but other groups, because we've approved those requests at the governing council level. So that's why I know that has happened.
Well, and I was making the assumption that no one in this group had the capacity to create this map, but if you do, feel free to raise your hand or shout out from the phone.
I think that was my thing, is like, oh, this is great, but how are we, like, we could do a brain dump.
I was gonna say, maybe the first step is identifying, what it is we want to know in asset mapping. And I'm looking at you because you're a technology wizard, IT app person. So do you have any thoughts about what mechanisms?
About what that would look
What
like?
that would look
Well,
like.
I think there's a good example already, with the food desert. They did a, nationwide food desert sort of mapping, that obviously is a lot broader than kind of the city, but in that piece, they were able to break it out across these, that's actually what I was thinking about when I said levels. They were able to break it off, in terms of filters that kind of were able to segment, mileage, there's a bunch of different levels. Maybe I'll send a link to that. I think it's still available, it's a little old now. But, something on that scale. Now, we're not gonna be as complicated in that way. I think we'll be a little more specific once we narrow down what the actual data points are gonna be, whether it's, nutritional services, at what level, like you said, there's different types of nutritional services, so that could be multiple layers in that part of it. Whether then you start talking about food access points, pantries, food banks. I think once you understand the data categories, that we want to package it into, then I think something like that, a model like that, where we kind of have a generic map that kind of has these filters that are sort of red, yellow, green, kind of the different data pieces that you're really trying to talk to. Yeah, I think it can make sense. But no, I do think about it on the tech. I guess it doesn't have to be on like a technology piece. It can be like just a regular map. But I think about
Like it needs to be searchable and like,
for other people,
living.
for city, and that people can access multiple.
And that's why I asked that question. Can I go on your website and click on those and see who, what, where they exist?
Are there students who would want?
Maybe we should check out that resource, the Food Learning Locator, because it sounds like
that might be, like, let's pull it up and see what it says.
I think but doing a asset map like that, I don't think is gonna be the tricky part. I actually think the tricky part is gonna be those data elements and breaking down exactly what you want in that map.
Right.
And then I think there's probably a bunch of different groups, technically, yeah, because even the school project, I take it over to the university, how they like me.
Depending on like what is needed, like what points of data, I have the capacity to do that for sure. And I've done like ArcGIS mapping, which would be like just the easiest way, the successful way to do that.
That's exactly.
Welcome to the group. I will strong arm you into giving us support with this project.
Let me clarify about the map. So that's just a one-time map for the pantries that access the funding. Let me clarify what Hunger Free can do in regards to, so we do have a pantry map that we keep updated. And so it's only food pantries and a few after-school lunch, or after-school snack and supper sites, right? So don't reinvent that wheel. We will be happy to contribute there, right? But I think it's all of these other access points that we're talking about. I just wanted to clarify that that does exist out there in the world, and we're happy to think about how to share that.
So I'm not familiar with the equity index, is it called the equity index?
The Equity Atlas.
Atlas, thank you. The equity atlas, but to me, it's a similar kind of thing. So I'm guessing once we check out that and check out all the other things, it's probably just a matter of getting layers. I mean, CDE probably has.
But it's a great resource. I don't know that it would
I
give
didn't know
us
they have that.
information.
I don't know what.
No,
what
it would
their-
give us, like, economic level, where are certain ethnic pockets, where.
So not that, but I'm guessing.
But that concept, I
But the
think,
concept
is
is
what we're talking about in terms of searchable.
I have
Would
to
it
step
be-
out for a meeting, sorry. And I was just gonna say, I'll throw my hat in the name, or name in the, whatever, I'll throw my name in for helping to lead, but I also would not be sad if someone else wanted to lead, but
You would what?
I wouldn't be sad if someone else wanted to lead this, like to be.
Okay, well, you're one. Who else wants to be a leader of this?
That was a voluntold, if I've ever seen one, that was like.
Well, she knows I'm ready to be quiet.
I'm not volunteering necessarily for that on the phone, but since I know some of the people who put that example together, would it be helpful for me to reach out to them and just ask about sort of like, what did it take in terms of time or money or manpower to develop that type of resource?
That'd be great. So are you, initially, you two might work together, just getting this back together and continuing.
So I could just email you about like, kind of next steps, would that work?
Do you know if we're meeting outside of this time frame, like are we gonna be, is it gonna be additional meetings?
So let me, I'll put out there, because this is one of that next step question. One of the things that some of the other work groups are doing is that they've moved to quarterly meetings so that project teams can do their work in between and then come back once every quarter to move forward and do we need to ask for money or what are we needing to do? Because, I mean, this part alone is going to take 3 to 6 months, I would think. I may be wrong, but could be. I mean, then we begin to have this discussion around shared messaging and be ready in 2021 for some policy implications, potentially. I mean, that just sort of how my mind thinks. But
Before you need to step out, for my education, can we confirm what we're talking about the map being? It's an asset map of where nutrition education is happening? Is that?
As well as the other parts that you talked about. So the pantry, so you have food access, and then you have
Food access points.
nutritional, and you have nutritional.
how those begin to
How those
intersect.
how those
Okay.
overlap.
So not necessarily where nutrition education is happening, but where food access points are as well.
Both food
Yes.
access point, nutrition, I would say services, I don't know where, because I don't know how that's gonna break out yet, but yes, it'd be access, it may be services, it may be a couple levels to that as we define it. I think it's getting.
And nutrition education could be anything from a brochure to one-on-one nutrition counseling.
Which is, all those things can be broken down and have different layers.
That's right.
So maybe as like the next step could be that we would convene as a group and that we would use that time to go through and say like, as a group, this is what we want to put in as nutrition education. And we're going to count anything from a flyer to whatever, and we're going to count food access with all these different things, and we're going to count this so that we can start to get, to your point, the data points that we would need. Because that'll be the framing of the map. And maybe we'll end up backing out and being like, ooh, this is too much, but I think that would be the next, it feels like we need the next conversation around, are we all in agreement? And do we have the right people at the table, to your point, like, do we need other people or additional people at the table?
That'll probably include a sample, so we'll probably provide a sample. At least on the data.
Okay. So initially, you guys, we're gonna tag you as the project leaders. Leticia, you'll be able to get, I'll condense our notes and send them out, or ask Leticia to send them out. What did you say?
So, the lead, I'm sorry.
Megan?
Me.
And I can find your email address.
Yes.
Here's a carrot.
Oh, that's good. What is just generally, everybody likes that idea of quarterly with project team items?
Yes.
Is there something else that's, you want to meet every day, every week, right?
And we've divided up into different kind of project teams. Would it just be these two groups today? I think there's other.
Just these two groups today, that was kind of the,
That
that
would be
was
the
what
project
came out of our last meeting, is we prioritized and said, these two sets of things are what we're gonna do.
And I'm gonna say when, but when we get the $5 million for the food pantry assistance, I think they'll have to acknowledge that, like, people might wanna leave this group to go to that, or how does that group work with this group, but, because we have 4 strategies, 2 of which are wrapped up into that bill, correct?
One, at least one is.
And I think there's a lot of people that aren't here at the table right now that can fill some of those positions, right? Like CDHS, SNAP-Ed, I mean, there's just so much, so many folks we can reach out to.
And I would say to both of you, as you sort of put your heads together, we're happy to have space for people to meet. I don't know that we can always meet here, but in Montella, we'd be happy to meet you some. I'm sure Hunger Free could maybe accommodate meetings as well. All right,
We're reconvening, yeah?
we are supposed to reconvene in like 8 minutes, so I guess we can.
Take a little break.
We can talk among ourselves.
For me on the phone before everyone leaves, could I just get a clarification on who I should share that information with when I, whatever I'm able to get from the foundation that's already put that tool together? Just back to the whole
I would say
group, or-
share it with Leticia. She can get it out to our team, but that's the best focal point, I think, for all of us.
Thank you. I just missed whose name that was.
Great, thanks.
I also have a suggestion for folks in the room.
I'm still here. I'm still recording. Go ahead.
I think it might be worth reaching out to some of the food policy councils. And I think Wendy Getty probably has all the information, but I know for our area, we've already been doing some GIS mapping of some of the locations that you all were talking about in the room. So a lot of the individual GIS maps might already be available in certain parts of the state.
I think that that's probably true across different parts of the state. And again, I think if you could share that information with Leticia, she can get that back to our group so that we'll have that on the discussion table next time.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. All right, everybody's sending their info back to you. Okay, and you do you have time to just type out that much and send that to me?
I'll just have it, or I'll just have it see, and then you can make changes.
And then I'll just add it.
And, yeah, she'll get back to me, and then, okay, yeah. So, that's why I have it. So that way I know. So this will be, so because I'm to release it, I don't want to shut down.
No, is this just with this?
Just with this.
Oh, well, I'm not on that.
So like, so it doesn't not all access people on the phone.
Okay, good.
So they'll have the information. How can institutions buy together collectively? So hopefully one day we'll get to that.
I got a job.
Yeah, so like, just how we. I'm just quick to.
Listen, think about those of us who were trying to keep this animal going before there was you and Karen, the new people who are gonna be coming in.
I think I'm ahead of the game. So he thinks that too.
Yeah, that's always gonna be the case.
Oh, okay. Really helpful with the child nutrition. Yeah. Absolutely. Nice to meet you too.
Oh, and I don't want you to think I think it's supposed to be.
Oh, I totally,
don't.
I mean, some places it does suck.
But,
You know, Salisbury steak is still a thing that is served.
oh, I'm sure.
So,
But the fact that people keep saying it
100%.
is so disconcerting because that is either the narrative or their experience.
Right.
And either way, it doesn't serve.
100%, 100%. And it really depends on the district and their needs and their resources and.
Where do you work again?
I'm at CDE.
Oh, you are
School
in
nutrition.
CDE. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a complex issue, it's not, but
Don't you think people can go down bond issues? I mean, it's not just one thing, it's just not analyzed. It goes like, therefore school sucks, or whatever.
you know, the reimbursement rate is like $375, so like, you're working with that to like, you know, for labor, like for plate costs, right? And so, I mean,
But I think it's a disservice that the public doesn't understand this, because I think a lot of people would say, that's not okay, this is what my kid eats 4 or 5
exactly.
times.
For a lot of families,
And
it's all the food they get.
For free and reduced kids, over 60% of their calories come from school lunch a day, which is, you know, it's significant. And we're really excited about the legislation that just passed, the local food purchasing program. So I'm working I'm taking that 6-page bill and implementing it in our office.
I hope CDE will talk to public health and say, here's how you can help promote the message.
100%.
We would love to.
Yeah, we should be doing some more cross-training and between agencies. We did meet with CDPHE, with the CACFP folks. It was our first time to have like a joint meeting in the same room.
Great.
And it's like, we're doing the same work, and like, this is the first time we've ever sat down
So
together.
I'd love to see the locals get involved, because I can't speak for every local health department.
Yeah.
Many of us are looking at food security, and obviously the food served through the school lunch program, et cetera, universal breakfast. I mean,
Yeah.
it's right in.
Absolutely.
So how we can do a better job of partnering and
Yep.
sharing the
Yep.
message and just.
Does anybody know if CDA is at the table here? Department of Ag?
Not that I'm aware of, not in this group. That doesn't mean they're not on
In another work group?
Yeah.
Might make the most sense that they were on the WIC SNAP work group.
Yeah. Yeah, or this nutrition ed piece too, though. I mean,
Exactly.
I think you're right.
maybe once we get some more, a little deeper in, I can reach out to some people at CDA. The new commissioner is pretty amazing. She's so young, and she's like, supports young farmers.
I'm hearing such good things about her too, and I think, again,
Yeah,
fresh starts. This is-
absolutely.
They're not coming back.
Well, it was supposed to be, they have 1 minute before they're supposed to be back in here.
All right. Yeah, I got that.
Where's that music coming from?
The lobby.
Oh, it's from the lobby.
Yeah. You guys have to there's a lot of. I was at Sherry. I was at FDR before. How did you do there? I was, I started a new shop. Okay. Now, are you like the, and then switched over to the Education Network?
I'm the two, it's another river.
Okay. I really was like, yeah, really was the start. But I was out at Liver, earlier this summer visiting some of our friends. July or so.
So you were just up there.
Oh, yeah, okay. We did a little,
Is contract.
Thank you.
what we call like kickstart. So we go on science for review here. So we came on site.
And that would be working on
and what to expect for their review.
I would assume they would. Absolutely report us as a council, but then, moderated. Yeah, it was, the food truck is still this year into many meals. It's unusual, and I know more budgeted, and then we're not getting money per site, so we, that was like.
But, it's, hopefully with some, like, suggestions and technical, there's some opportunities. Outreach and.
All right.
So I think she definitely has some thoughts on next summer.
Well, we're just gonna do a quick wrap up, today, and I think the best place to probably do this wrap up is to talk a little bit about kind of next steps in meeting structure, so would love to hear. We didn't have a whole lot of time as our group to discuss it, but liked the idea of doing a more frequent project team meeting and a less frequent work group meeting.
And our work group, subgroup would also like that. And we have, we did get co-project leads, and we all came up with kind of a plan of how we're gonna proceed. And everybody liked the idea of quarterly meetings for our big group and project team meetings as each team works it out.
Great. All right, so we will probably go ahead and, so just one logistical issue. The person who created all of the work group calendar appointments, her email address was closed and the IT contractor cannot get it back. So we can't actually delete any of your calendar appointments, which is really special. So apologies in advance for that. We will be sending new appointments, but don't delete all the recurring ones yet because we need to send new appointments before you do that. So we'll get to that, but sorry about, I live and die by my calendar, so it's extremely frustrating. But it just is what it is, and we will get you new appointments as soon as we can, and then give you the go-ahead to delete all of the recurring appointments that are on your calendars in perpetuity as well, so. Great. So logistically, again, we will send out some notices around October and potentially November. Both the November and December meetings, I think one is the day before Thanksgiving and the other one is right around Christmas, so we need to reschedule that anyway, so we could do a December meeting maybe earlier in the month.
And then we'll get quarterly meetings for the 2020 started to schedule out, so. Awesome. Well, thank you all, appreciate it, and we'll all be in touch soon. Thank you, everybody, and thank you to folks on the phone.
I'm just sitting on a panel. Oh, okay. Other than that, yeah, it's very nice because it's all